Welcome back to another episode of The Game of Fintech. I'm Dipal and I'm joined by my co-host Danni Grande. Today we're diving into the world of fintech integrations, breaking down the what, why and how of bringing different fintech tools together to level up your advice business. We're making this a quick tips and tricks podcast to arm you with information on this really important aspect of your tech stack. So let's take a bit of a deeper dive into the most common ones we're seeing in advice tech in Australia. The one most familiar to us all is EPIs, which stands for External Platform Integration. So we see this in the way of data feeds into our advice CRMs. So let's break down how they work. Danni?
All right. Yeah. So this is as you said, the most common one that we understand, I guess, in advice tech in Australia. So it's really important to understand that Iris defines the standardized format and acts as sort of the intermediary between the platform or the product provider back into the advice CRM. So the middleman, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Then data mapping between the systems needs to take place. So, for example, if on the EPI format we have first name, for example, and in the advice CRM it's called preferred name, we need to map those two fields and identify those so that they match when the data is flowing back and forth. So challenges may arise if data fields or definitions change in either system. So if that preferred name then changed back to first name, that would have to be remapped. So regular maintenance is essential, and it's really important to know that. And what we commonly see as the end users is portfolio information translating between the systems with API data feeds. So what we see on our user interface is things like portfolio reporting, assets and that sort of thing. That's where that data flows, or that API data flows into our advice CRMs.
Yeah, so I guess, a quick example would be, we've got a product provider that uses this EPI format to construct the files that they send to the CRM. And then the file is normally sent to like a data warehouse for storage and cleansing before it gets passed to the CRM. And once that data is available, in most instances, it's automatically mapped to the CRM record. There may be some manual mapping required in instances, which we've seen. And I guess once that data is mapped, then, as you said, Danni, the advisor can then view the information in the CRM. So, if it's assets or portfolio or insurance or documents, based on what that EPI file's bringing through.
Yeah. And you can kind of see, I guess, why we see errors in data feeds. And I think it's a really common frustration in advice businesses that we do see errors in that portfolio information not matching necessarily what's sitting in the platform. But I guess understanding how that information is pushed to the system, you can kind of see that we've got middlemen involved, we've got development teams essentially on either side making those data feeds work. So, it's sort of, I guess, an area that could have errors, and we do see that day to day in our advice.
Yeah, I reckon that's been the biggest pain point for most people, data feeds.
Yeah, 100% agree. All right, what's next?
All right, so let's now move into APIs. Now they're definitely gaining, a lot of popularity these days, and seems to be a regular part of the fintech vernacular. What are they? How do they work? What should we know about APIs, Danni?
All right. So APIs follow predefined standards. So it requires developers on either side to create that integration. And each piece of advice technology needs to have an API document, basically, which is really just talking about the language that they're using and the fields that are defined in each of those technology solutions. A set of rules and protocols allow different software applications to communicate and interact with each other. And then we get that direct connection between the systems, real-time data exchange. It's suitable for high frequency and sort of those critical interactions. And it's also really secure as well. So what we're seeing now with API integrations, we're probably relatively immature in the Australian market when it comes to understanding and getting those API integrations up and running. But there is a lot of work going into that, as we're seeing with the tech providers. But what we're sort of seeing at the moment is that basic client data flowing between the two systems with API integrations. And that really helps things like double keying or reducing the double keying, if, between the systems, double handling of information, which, often doesn't sort of sound like a huge job, but when you're doing that across a large client base, really can bring in some efficiencies if you do get those APIs up and running. But I guess it's really critical to understand that to get an API integration up and running, you are going to need the technology providers to agree that they want to make that connection with each other, the development on either side, and that sort of thing.
That's right. So I guess, if we were to just give a very simple example of how APIs would work, is you would have a technology provider one, being your, say, CRM, and technology provider two being your platform. So both of them would have to do some work around building the API. So, developers will be involved as well. And once, you've established the API between the two systems, the client data will flow easily. And again, like anything, APIs would also have to be maintained by both parties on an ongoing basis. So I guess you could say APIs are like it's the main bridge that enables the different software systems to sort of work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, it's sort of important to note we sort of want our systems to integrate. Obviously, we've all got a tech stack going on, and integrations make a lot of sense, but it's not as easy as just getting the systems to talk to each other because of that. I guess the
That's right.
resources that are required to build the
Mm,
API integration on either side. Obviously, that is money as well and time.
correct.
And sometimes getting these API integrations up and running can take you a couple of years, depending on the development cycle for each of those tech providers. So I think it's sort of really important that we understand. Yes, it's
Mm.
great to have APIs, but there is this process in the background that we need to be aware of. So it's really important to ask questions if your providers are telling you that they're integrating. That's really great, but sort of dive a little bit deeper and ask how those integrations are working. Are they going to extend those integrations in the future? Is it, if it's just basic client data at the moment, is
Mm.
it going to bring in other more comprehensive data moving forward as part of that development and maintenance cycle?
And I guess the key part is also working out first where's the gap in your business, as in what do you need before you even go down that path of, requesting, I guess, for an API to be established. Because as you mentioned, it can be a very costly exercise, and it can take a while to build this. So it's good to sort of get that your specs right, as in like, what do we need?
Yeah, 100%. All right. Another one that we've been hearing about lately is Zapier. So what is Zapier? It's gaining
Mm.
popularity, but I think there's a bit of a lack of understanding on what Zapier actually does. Again, it's sort of like the middleman of integrations, but you don't need a coding team to make a Zap happen. Zapier kind of handles it for you, but you do have to do some work in Zapier to create the Zap. And there is a level of technical knowledge required. We've tried to we do build Zaps for our clients here at Finura, and sometimes there's a lot of complexity. I think once you get into building those Zaps and getting that integration up and running really well. Otherwise, as always, you can get super frustrated with these things. So
That's right.
so the key point is no coding is required. So a lot of more of a simplified way to build an integration. And users can create Zaps without any sort of real programming knowledge. But like I still think practically you do need to have a little bit of technical knowledge to sort of
Mm.
understand how the Zaps work. So it supports integration with over 3,000 apps. So that's pretty cool, right? It really opens up your integration capability in your tech stack, and it allows your advice businesses to connect your preferred tools reasonably easily. It does act as the intermediary, as we said earlier, and gets that integration happening between apps that may not have direct API connections. So maybe an alternative to building an API. And it can be more budget friendly than custom API development. As we mentioned before, API development can be very expensive and time consuming and that sort of thing. We're looking at a lot less money to get integration up and running. It's probably fair to say that the integrations that you can get with Zapier are reasonably basic. So again, we're just talking about that basic client data moving back and forth between systems. But again, that does really help things like double handling of documents. It is a big deal for the back office to get those apps up and running. So if we've got any examples.
Yeah, and I think the common ones we're seeing is, where you've got a CRM, your advice CRM, and then if you're using something like a type form to, email your clients a fact find document and collect that information digitally, and then you want that data to flow back into your CRM. And then so you would create a Zap to connect the advice CRM and your ancillary application being type form. And again, like every other integration, a Zap also requires maintenance, as they do tend to break as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I saw, one of the things that we work with our advice businesses, a lot of our businesses are sort of looking to Salesforce solutions and, getting a little bit deeper into that Office 365 suite of products that they have. And Zapier offers those integrations into Salesforce and Office
Yeah.
365. So you can kind of, again, keeping it
Mm-hmm.
sort of pretty basic. These aren't complex integrations that we're talking about. We're talking about basic client data
Mm-hmm.
being pushed back and forth. But still, I think that does make an impact on an advice business.
No, that's true. So I think that wraps up our session today. So we, explored the dynamic world of fintech integrations, so from EPI data feeds to APIs, and then we've also looked at the functionality of Zapier. Remember that integrations are the secret sauce to streamline your operations. So I guess, be sure to ask your tech providers on how they work, get them to show you examples. And if you're going down the API development road, then make sure you have a solid project plan in place to keep the development on track and most importantly in budget. Also, don't forget to take our tech health check, which is available on our Finura Group website, and it's free. And we will catch you later.
Awesome. See you later.